She blinded me with science. Doo-doo-doo-doo. She blinded me with I can't see. Oh, wait a second. There we go. All right. Hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is 3-1 Animal Reproduction. This is a new video. Mr. Lewis here with you. Notice on board is your bell ringer over here. That is your bell ringer. I'll go ahead and give you a second to look at it, write it down, and then make sure you go ahead and post up your answers. They're on Edmodo. Let us begin. Our objectives today are going to be to describe the patterns and advantages of asexual reproduction in animals, describe the patterns and advantages of sexual reproduction in animals, explain how sexual reproduction is related to the variation within a species, explain the difference between external and internal fertilization, and identify the 3 different types of mammalian reproduction. You try and say that 5 times fast. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Asexual reproduction. Ladies and gentlemen, you should have learned this already, but in case you haven't, asexual reproduction is reproduction with only one parent, okay? And those offspring that one parent create are genetically identical, all right? This is very important that you understand. We talk about asexual reproduction. They are genetically identical. In other words, they are an exact copy of the parent, all right? So if an organism reproduces asexually, it is an exact copy of the parent. Now, the good thing about asexual reproduction is that organisms waste no energy. They don't have to spend any time looking for a mate. They don't have to spend any time looking for to defend a mate or anything, because they reproduce themselves. And they can reproduce many offspring in a very short amount of time. This is crucial, guys. That's the reason why asexual reproduction is such a good thing for some organisms, because they're able to produce a lot of themselves and they are genetically identical. Now, the bad thing about asexual reproduction is the fact that if they are genetically identical and the parent has a defect of some sort, well, guess what? All of the offspring have that same defect. All right. Now, the asexual reproduction, they've reproduced through 3 different types of reproduction. They have budding, fragmentation, regeneration. Those are different ways. Now, there's other ways as well. Let's talk about budding first. Now, budding is simply the plant is here and it grows a little bud on the side. And guess what? That plant may or may not break away from the parent and create a whole new plant. Okay. That is budding. Fragmentation, they actually grow a whole new part. Okay, so this was fragmentation. I grow a whole new part, and when it gets big enough, it'll break away and it'll create its own organism. All right, and regeneration, some organisms are able to break off something and regrow themselves, and then that part that broke off of them, that part can actually grow into a new organism. Although the tail of a lizard does not turn into another lizard, the lizard being able to grow a tail is an example. Not an example of asexual reproduction, but gives you an idea what I'm talking about when I say regeneration. It's able to grow another part. Now, that lizard doesn't reproduce asexually; it reproduces sexually, but it's able to grow a new tail. And other organisms that reproduce asexually are able to grow in other body parts. Now, remember that these are genetically identical. Okay, they are genetically identical to the parent. So that is the benefit of asexual reproduction, and the fact that they don't have to spend time looking for a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and they can produce many offspring in a very short amount of time. Next, we're going to talk about sexual reproduction. Obviously, sexual reproduction means that you have more than one parent combining to create this new offspring. That is sexual reproduction. All right. Now, in animals, it usually requires 2 parents, a male and a female. You have to have both of those in order to have sexual reproduction in animals. Female parent sex cells are called the eggs, and the male sex cells are called sperm. That is the sex cells in animals. When individuals with different characteristics reproduce, this combination of genes, sexual reproduction allows for variation within a population. What does that mean? That simply means that when you have 2 different organisms and they reproduce sexually, that the genes from the father and the genes from the mother, they are combined to create the offspring. The offspring is not genetically identical to the mother or genetically identical to the father. Instead, it has a combination of both those genes together. Okay, so in sexual reproduction, it has some genes of the mother and some genes of the father, and those combine to create the new individual. Now, granted, sometimes that individual does look a lot like the mother or a lot like the father, but they are not genetically identical. They have in their genetic makeup, they have a portion of their mother's cells and a portion of mother's genes and a portion of their father's genes together to create that organism. So if we take a look at this, this is what I've been talking about right here. So we start off looking at our grandparents. So we'll just talk about grandparents. This is your grandfather, grandmother's genes on one side, and this is your grandmother and grandfather's genes on your mother's side. Okay, so your grandmother and grandfather, they end up meeting together. They have the sperm cell and the egg cell. Notice that they've taken some of the genes from the grandmother and some of the genes from the grandfather, and then those genes are given to the father. Okay, so you look here, you see how that is that's a mixture of these genes and a mixture of these genes. All right, and then over here the same thing. Here's the grandfathers on the mom's side given some of the cells, and this is the grandmother, and this is the grandfather given some of the genes, and then those genes all come down here to the mother, and so there's the mother's genes right here. And then you notice that when the mother and the father mate, all right, you have the male sex cell, which is the sperm, and the female sex cell, which is the egg, contains the genes of both the grandmother and grandfather on the mother's side and grandmother and grandfather on the father's side. And then down here, you have a complete mixture. The child, this would be me or you, the child is a complete mixture of both the grandmother and grandfather on both sides of your father and mother's. All right, it's a mixture of all those genes, and that's how sexual reproduction does. Okay. Now, in animals, there are two types of fertilization. All right, you have internal and you have external fertilization. When we talk about external fertilization, what we're talking about is an organism actually fertilizes the eggs outside of the mother's body. Okay, outside the female's body, they actually fertilize the eggs. So the male will swim by, like in some examples of fish. The female will swim by and she'll lay a whole bunch of eggs. Then the male will swim by and he'll spread a whole bunch of sperm over top of those eggs, allowing those eggs to be fertilized that way. That's external fertilization. Now, the key thing for external fertilization is they have to be in a moist, wet environment in order for this to happen, because the sperm cells and the egg cells, if they don't have liquid, they're going to die off. Well, here's an example here. You can see that. Internal fertilization is the process where the egg and the sperm join inside the female's body. So internal fertilization is basically the egg and the sperm. They come together inside the female's body, and then they develop right there. They fertilize inside the female's body. Now, obviously, you could probably imagine that is how humans are reproduced. Now, when we talk about mammals, all right, all mammals reproduce sexually, all of them. Okay, every single mammal reproduces sexually. There are three types of mammals. You have monotremes, you have marsupials, and you have placentals. All right, monotremes are mammals that lay eggs. So these are mammals that actually lay eggs, and echidnas and platypus, those are examples of monotremes. All right, now an echidna, I really don't know what an echidna is. I've looked; it kind of looks like I can't remember what it looks like, but I really don't know what an echidna is. But a platypus, those are monotremes because they lay eggs. The next example would be marsupials. Marsupials are mammals that give birth to partially developed live young. In other words, they give birth to the baby, and as the baby is born, it is not able to fully survive in the world it's been born into, so it has to go inside of the mother's pouch. Typically, the marsupial has a pouch, and that's where the baby goes, and it continues to develop inside the pouch. All right, not all of them, but most of them have those. Examples of those would be kangaroos, koalas, wombats, Tasmanian devils. Those are examples of marsupials. And lastly, are placental mammals. So these are mammals that are nourished inside the mother's body before birth. You have your example of the horse and humans, where the female carries the fetus all the way through to the time it's born. And when it's born, it's basically, as long as it's fed, it's able to survive on its own. It has all of the necessary parts it needs to survive on its own. That is an example of placental mammals. So these are the three different types of mammals right here. Obviously, we are placental mammals. Oh gosh, it's review time, It's time for the review. This was a very short section. You guys are lucky. It's under 10 minutes. I'll go ahead and pause here for a second so you guys can read and write down these review notes, and then we'll finish up. Well, all right. I hope you guys enjoyed that nice short video. This will be 3.1, your section review. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and we'll be seeing you in the future.